Okay, so let's say we have two radicals, the square root of 3 times the square root of 5, and we want to multiply them. What we are going to do is you just multiply the insides. 3 times 5 is 15. So let's say I have the square root of 8 times the square root of 12. And I want to multiply those two to figure out what those are. You would go 8 times 12 is 96. Then look to see if you can simplify the radical. I'm looking for a perfect square root in 96, so that would be the square root of 16 times 6. And 16 is a perfect square root, so that would be 4 square root of 6. There's your basic radical multiplication. Let's take a look at some harder examples here. All right, so when you multiply radicals, you can distribute or FOIL as well. One thing you need to be aware of is that you can only multiply the insides of a radical if they have the same root or index number. So let's take a look. So let's say we have the square root of 3 times the square root of 8 plus the square root of 7. We are just going to multiply or distribute that square root of 3 through. So I would have the square root of 3 times the square root of 8, which is the square root of 24, plus the square root of 3 times the square root of 7, which is the square root of 21. Now we just go ahead and simplify that answer if we can. 24 is 4 times 6. So the square root of 4 is 2. We do not have a square root for 6, plus the square root of 21. 21 does not have a perfect square as a factor, so this would be our final answer. Let's take a look at another one where we actually distribute. So first distribute, second simplify. So we're going to distribute that cube root of 6 through to the cube root of x plus the cube root of 9. So the first one would be, since they're both cube roots, it's 6 times x here, plus 6 times 9 is 54. So there's the first step, is doing the distributing. Now we're just going to look and see if either one of our radicals have a perfect cube root inside them. So we have the 6x, there's no perfect cube there, but 54. 54 is 27 times 2, and 27 is a perfect cube root. So our final answer then would be the cube root of 6x plus 3 cube root of 2. That would be our final answer. So another thing you can do with radical expressions is you can FOIL them. So let's say I have 5 square root of 2 plus 2 square root of 3 times 2 square root of 2 minus 4 square root of 3. Now this is a pretty complex expression, but it's going to be the exact same process as FOILing before. So you're going to go and multiply the first. We have 5 square root of 2 times 2 square root of 2. So that's 5 times 2 is 10. 10 square root of 4. First, and then outer. 5 times negative 4 is negative 20. Square root of 2 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 6. Now let's go ahead and go inner. 2 square root of 3 times 2 square root of 2 is 4 square root of 6. And then 2 square root of 3 times negative 4 square root of 3 is negative 8 square root of 9. All right, now we just do, or after we do the multiplication, We're going to go ahead and simplify. So 10 square root of 4, the square root of 4 is 2. It's 10 times 2, which is 20. I have negative 20 square roots of 6 plus 4 square root of 6 is negative 16 square root of 6. So that's this part right here. And then the last part is minus the square root of 9 is 3. 8 times 3 is 24. 20 minus 24 is negative 4. And then minus 16 square root of 6. So that would be our final answer after we combine all like terms. Remember, when you're combining terms, you can only combine radicals that are the same radical, meaning the same number inside, as well as the same root, and then you can combine the constants. Let's take a look at one last problem. So I'm going to go first, outer, inner, last again. So the square root of 6 times the square root of 6 is the square root of 36, which is just 6. The square root of 6 times the square root of 3 is negative square root of 18. The square root of 3 times the square root of 6 is plus the square root of 18. And the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is minus 3. Okay, we combine these together, so we have 6 minus 3 is 3. Negative square root of 18 plus positive square root of 18 is 0, so our final answer is 3. Those two values together, square root of 6 plus the square root of 3 times the square root of 6 minus the square root of 3, will always cancel out the radicals. So whenever you have what's called the conjugate of each other, the same numbers but opposite sides, when you multiply them, your square roots cancel. And if you can think of that as the difference of the squares, then the multiplication is really quick.